Good morning and welcome to the Ricky Mathew Show, where we celebrate the people who are working so hard to make Mississippi such a great place to live, work, and play. And we have a great guest today. So I just want to share a couple of quotes with you, and then a thought that I have about a note that I got this morning. So bear with me. First one is something I got from Hope Shot. It's a social media site that I subscribe to, and it gives you sort of hopeful phrases from day to day. And this one, I don't know who said this, but I think it's good. It says, "Don't ever stop being you, being real, being what you are. The spontaneous, ridiculous, beautiful you. The you that doesn't give a what others think because you are too busy being you." I love that because, too often we try to be somebody we're not, and we kind of bow to all the pressure that's around us, and social media has a way of making life more complicated for us. But man, is there something to say for authenticity. Just be you, man. People love you for you. And if they don't, the heck with them. That's not what I have to say about it. And then my cousin's daughter, Michelle Tice. Michelle is the family member who introduced me to my friend in Ukraine, who's on my show on a regular basis. And she posted this morning, and I just loved it, and I just wanted to share it with you. And again, I'm not sure who said this, but it's just a beautiful saying. Here it is. "I just thought I'd remind everyone we're all worn thin. We're all about 4 incidents away from a meltdown, and none of us knows which number any other person is on. Let's breathe and pray. Let's extend grace to ourselves and everyone else. Let's reset again and again and again if we need to. And let's remember this life thing is hard for everyone. Then let's stand back and begin again. We can do this together." What a beautiful saying. Kind of goes to the whole notion of you never know what other people are going through. You may remember I had a show a week or two ago with a young lady who attempted suicide and survived, and as a result, she had spinal cord damage, and she's going on a mission now to share her story and to influence young people that there are other options. And she points out that she did not really wish to kill herself, but she wanted to relieve the pain. Her name was Emma Benoit. You may remember the conversation between myself and Paige Roberts, who is the executive director of the Jackson County Chamber. Paige is on a mission in this area, and I'm so happy to see members of the community joining together. They're bringing Emma over. And I think that we're going to continue the conversations because there have been at least 3 teen suicides that parents have been willing to talk about, and we need to be inspired by their stories to figure out what we can do more to help young people, especially young people. But this is not unique to young people only, to know that they're not alone and that we can help them. I thought it was ironic, actually, that not long after that, I had, in fact, it was last Monday, I had a conversation with a Major Glenn Jackson who works for the Department of Wildlife, Fisheries, and Parks, and he is from Rolling Forks. So the first time I talked to him a few months ago, he talked about how so many members of his family lost their homes and what they were going through. They were very hopeful about it, incidentally. And then Glenn gave us an update on Monday to say that they're rebuilding, and in some cases maybe rebuilding better than before. But I love the spirit, and I say this all the time. As we learned in coastal Mississippi after Hurricane Katrina, as they learned in the lower Delta after the tornadoes, as we learn every time we're challenged in Mississippi, that all the politics and division of the world get kind of put to the side, and we get to see what's in the heart and soul of Mississippians. And it's a beautiful thing to see. And it takes time. I mean, the lower Delta has been working to sort of clear the debris and start the rebuilding process, and they're making tremendous progress now. It takes time. But you can do it when you have the point of view that Glenn Jackson and his family has. And then I get this note this morning from my friend Paige, who was engaged with, and I'm going to the note now. She was involved in a conversation with someone who's in Rolling Forks, involved in the in the recovery effort. And he enlightened Paige that there have been 5 suicides in high school in Rolling Forks. 5 suicides. And it's a reminder that we've got work to do. We've got a lot of work to do. And I'm pretty confident that SuperTalk's going to go on a mission as it relates to this. I'm certainly going to stay focused on it. Paige and her team are going to be focused on it. But, it just goes to say you never really know what someone's going through. You really just never know. In one of the cases of the young man in Jackson County, he told his father he had one of the best days of his life. And then he went upstairs and hung himself. That's tough. But you know what? From their situations, we have to find our own inspiration to touch as many people as possible, to let them know that there are alternatives. And we will stay focused on that on this show. I can absolutely assure you. I hate to start the show out kind of in a bleak way, but there's a lot of hopefulness about what I say as well, and that is that the community is coming together and starting to rally, and that is a good thing, and that is a very good thing. Okay, so let me shift gears. I've been really looking forward to this next conversation. As you know, it's no secret to you that my friend Steve Azar and I have had many, many, many shows, me on his show, he on my show, many, many times. One of the blessings of joining the SuperTalk family has been the opportunity to get to know Steve Azar, who is the music and cultural ambassador for Mississippi. His song won Mississippi before it was voted by the Mississippi legislature and signed into law by the governor as the new state song for Mississippi. His song, One Mississippi, was the theme song for SuperTalk Outdoors. And I pushed hard in every way I could to get that song out there because I just felt like it was the perfect solution for replacing what was a really bad song before that unfortunately spoke a little bit too much to Mississippi's history, and we needed to turn the corner just like we did with the state flag. So Steve's song came about. I've been so proud of him, and then he and Sarah Frances Hardy joined forces and launched a children's book. He is the author with the One Mississippi Song, and her is the illustrator. And I'm so thrilled now to have Sarah Frances Hardy on my show. How you doing, Sarah Frances Hardy?
I am great. Thank you for having me. I love your show. It's just a good boost to hear all of the positive things you highlight in the state. It's good. And you're a great interviewer. So I'm thrilled to be here.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate it. You're going to be an easy interview, but what's interesting about you, and we're going to talk about the book, and I'll break the ice a little bit with the book. We'll kind of talk a little bit about it, but then we're going to get into details about the book a little bit later, because I want to take a step back and talk about your unique past that brings you to be an artist, and you were a lawyer. You stepped back from that along the way, but we're going to talk about all that here in just a second. But isn't it awesome to see how this book is being received across the state of Mississippi?
I mean, it is incredible. It's just happy, and it's children smiling and singing the song. We did an event at Casey Elementary School in Jackson. I guess it was last week, and a little boy, picked up the book and held it up. And there's this one of the kids has these cool dreadlocks, and he held it up. He goes, "It's me," and it did look just like it. It was like, it is you. So it's been fun, and of course Steve's song is so good. I mean, I can't imagine another state has a state song as cool as ours. I mean,
I love your style. Cal, can you show the book? He'll show the cover of the book here in just a second. But for the audience, but for the Facebook, SuperTalk TV, and YouTube audience, but for the people who are on the radio, describe your style.
Well, I like color. I like whimsy. And the most important thing to me when I'm illustrating a book is the characters that populate the story. And so I spent a lot of time creating these 7 characters that walk you through Mississippi. And then I went on site. I visited lots of places. I painted a little bit on site, just did quick studies, but mostly I took pictures and came back and did a lot of the backgrounds and places that are in the book. But I use gouache, and I kind of wash out my colors. I use them like watercolor, and then I do a little bit of digital editing. But
well, it's terrific, and I love the way you captured the diversity of Mississippi. And again, we'll get into a little bit more detail about how the collaboration came about. And for those who are watching in video format, you can see the cover of One Mississippi Now, written by Steve Azar and it's illustrated by Sarah Frances Hardy. What a beautiful book. Hey, one final thing I'll say about the book for now, and then we'll come back to it a little bit later in the show, is that to me, it's a little bit like Disney. Mm-hmm. Here's why I think that. So you think about the magic of Disney is that every time a child is born, it's a new generation of people to introduce it to. Mm-hmm. And so what you're seeing is Steve travels across the state, going to school, singing One Mississippi, and thousands of books are getting bought up. It's just awesome to see, and it's going to keep renewing itself. When we come back, we'll continue our conversation with Sarah Frances Hardy. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Mathew Show. I have Sarah Frances Hardy, who's the illustrator for the One Mississippi children's book, which we'll get into a lot more detail about here in just a second. But, Sarah's got an interesting past because she went to Ole Miss Law School. She went to Davidson College to get a bachelor's in art. She did some studies in New York and France, and anyway, really interesting past. But let's go back a little bit further than that. So you live in Oxford now, but where did you grow up?
I grew up in Jackson. And I actually, in the One Mississippi book, I have a little cameo about my family because my grandfather was Alvin Brent, who had Brent's drugstore in the Fondren area. It's still there. It's a restaurant now. So I grew up in Jackson, grandfather, parents in Jackson. So I'm a Mississippi girl.
So as you were growing up, did you always have sort of a creative side to you? Did you know that you were going to develop something around that?
Absolutely. If you had asked me when I was a child what I wanted to do when I grew up, this is what I would say. I would want to write and illustrate children's books. I had an incredible third grade teacher. Her name was Miss Carter, and she would encourage me to write poems, and then she would hand them right back to me and say, now illustrate it. And there was this constant back and forth. And I was the kid. I always had my nose in a book and was always creating, drawing. Yes. So always. And I tell you what, these teachers, man, they can really, really encourage you and push you in a good direction. And that's what happened to me.
Yeah, my daughter Tori is an artist, and we knew early in her life. She got a degree in marketing, then went back and got a degree in education, and she's a teacher, and we're so proud of her. But we knew early on that illustrating and art is going to be her thing. Do you know the marine artist Marty Wilson down here on the coast?
I do not.
Yeah, you look him up, Marty Wilson.
Okay, I will.
Yeah, he is just an incredible. But his mother was an art teacher. They used to sit around the table as he was growing up around the kitchen table, and just she would say, "Okay, draw or whatever," and they would just draw. That's what they did for a family. They sat around the table drawing.
I love it.
Yeah, it's really cool. So you knew you had a love for that, but you ultimately became a lawyer. So what was it that enticed you to go that direction?
Mostly my dad, because here is his daughter with an art degree. And I think, and I get it as a parent, it can be hard to consistently make a living as an artist or a creative person. And he said, if you'll go to Ole Miss Law School, I'll help you out, and then you can graduate and do whatever you want to do, and you can afford all the paint, and you can afford, all of these things you want to do, but you'll have a really nice insurance policy and be able to take care of yourself. And that's valuable. It's really valuable. And I loved law school. I know nobody says that, but I really enjoyed it. And practicing was okay, but I was glad to be able to stop and really do more.
How long did you actually practice before you made the step back?
Not long, not more than a couple of years. Yeah.
Well, that's cool. So then you got heavily engaged. So you realized along the way that you're good enough at this to actually commercially succeed at doing it.
Yeah, and I worked hard. I think one thing a lot of artists have a hard time with is the business end of it. And so I learned. I did actually have a really good professor in college he was a very successful painter, and he was also very successful at getting his work into galleries and marketing himself and doing that other side of it. So I worked hard on that. I would spend about half my time sending work out and carrying a portfolio around to people and doing all that. So I worked as a fine artist for several years. And then I started having children and remembered this dream I had always had of writing and illustrating children's books. And of course, when you have small children, you are immersed in that world once again. And I just thought, I don't want to be sitting in a nursing home wondering if I could have been published or could have done this, if I don't really try. So
that's really cool. Hey, listen, one of the interesting stories of the evolution of casino gaming in coastal Mississippi was when Steve Wynn decided to come here and make that tremendous investment. And they batted around a bunch of different numbers, but the most solid number that I ever heard was it cost about $750 million to build it. And then after Hurricane Katrina, it cost about $750 million to fix it. Mm-hmm. So it was, it was a tremendous investment. And to make a decision after Hurricane Katrina to reinvest and to stay open, et cetera. But Steve Wynn, as we all know the story now, eventually left MGM Mirage company and went over and started his own deal. But one of the interesting stories about Steve was how actively engaged he was in the architecture and the decorating of the Beau Rivage. This was his sort of stock and trade, traveling to Italy and picking out specific marble and all the things that he did. In fact, I need to come back. I'm going to do a story. I need to come back and do a whole show focused on the building of the Beau Rivage and how incredible that was. But along the way, he bought some of your paintings to go to the Beau Rivage. How did that happen?
It was incredible. So at the time, I was represented by a gallery in New York, and I was in the hospital having my first child, and I came home from the hospital and I had a separate fund line for my art business. And this was back in the days of an answering machine, and it was blowing up. And so I picked it up, and it's my dealer in New York. Sarah Francis, I don't know where you are, but we have a very important corporate client, just like, please call us back. So it was incredible. He commissioned me to do 5 paintings for the Beau Rivage. And of course, Steve Wynn's whole thing is art. Like you said, he got very involved in choosing the carpet, the marble, every design of every restaurant. And so he wanted some Mississippi artists to be involved with the casino and to do some artwork for the casino. So Gail Pittman, do you remember Gail Pittman, who did the plates and the china? So he used some of her pieces for one of his restaurants. An artist in Memphis named George Hunt, he commissioned him to do several paintings. And then me, little old me. So I did 5 paintings and he wanted flowers. He wanted great big splashy flowers to go with his whole garden theme. And so the room key you used to get for the Beau Rivage was one of my paintings, was on the room key and on menus and different things. And then the paintings were hung in their corporate offices. And I mean, it was incredible. And then he had me come for these high roller parties, and Kenny Loggins would entertain, or Harry Connick Jr. It was this very, very strange, really wonderful time. And I loved the way he held up artists and craftsmanship and everything as his most important thing, which was just a real different way to approach casinos. I mean, he had a very different vision.
You may remember this, but for the grand opening celebration, one of the things that Steve did is he had this. I wish somebody probably out there still has a copy of this video, and if you do, reach out to me. Do you have it?
Okay, I have it.
So I've got maybe it's up on YouTube somewhere, but he produced this incredible. I showed a horse running down, I think, Calumet or whatever, and it had an antebellum feel to it. In fact, it was a lot of people on the coast said, it's a little bit off the mark from a marketing point of view. They did, that was kind of some of the chatter. But in there though, there's a scene on Back Bay, and that scene was actually filmed in the house where my house is built now. So that house that was built, we used to live next door, and during the storm, this home was destroyed, and we had pictures of it just before it was destroyed and just after it was destroyed. But the view from my back of my house now is literally the view that's in that video. So
that is incredible.
It's a little piece of trivia.
Well, I've got it. I'll get it to you. I hate to put it in the mail, but
is there a way to download it somehow? Maybe download
well,
it?
it's a VHS. It's a big old VHS.
It has to be converted somehow. Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny. I just saw it. I was just kind of going through some boxes of things, and I found it in there. And you remember Elizabeth Taylor narrated the
You're right. I remember. Yeah. Hey, listen, for anyone, if anyone's out, I'm sure there are people listening to this show now that here on the coast who may have a copy of that. If you do, I would love to be able to watch it, and maybe we could pull some segments from it for a show that I will do about the building of the Beau Rivage, because it is a fascinating story, and there are a lot of people out there who were there during that, and it would be interesting to go back and talk to them. We're having a conversation with Sarah Frances Hardy. She's the illustrator for the new book, One Mississippi, about the state song that Steve Azar, our friend Steve Azar, wrote, and now they have a book, and it's blowing up. It's doing extremely well. Neil White, for Gulfport residents, Neil White and his Nautilus Publishing Company published it. We'll talk about all that when we come back. We'll see you after this break. Welcome back to the Ricky Mathew Show. I really appreciate you joining us today. And as you can tell, man, one of the reasons I love doing this show is I get to meet so many cool people. And Sarah Frances Hardy is just one of them. And I'm enjoying this conversation. I told her during the break we're sort of long-lost friends. We've never met each other, but it seems our paths should have crossed along the way, because we have a love for coastal Mississippi. But that Beau Rivage connection is pretty cool. She was showing me during the break the actual invitation itself and the room key that she was talking about, and the big beautiful flowers that were on the invitation and on the room key. She painted them, so it's a small world. What a great reminder to me to go tell that story about the building of the Beau Rivage. So before we get into One Mississippi and your illustration of that wonderful children's book, let's shift gears just a little bit. Once you got out of law and you started illustrating, you started painting, doing all this incredible work commercially, you decided to really focus on children's books. Mm-hmm. And so was Puzzled in Pink your first published book? There were a lot of tries that never saw the light of day, but Puzzled by Pink was my first published book. I had to spend a lot of time. When I switched gears to illustration, it's a different process. It's narrative. My paintings were big landscapes or flowers, but with illustration work, there's a narrative, and not only is there a narrative, but you have
characters who you have to take through a narrative. And so I had to learn a lot about storytelling.
Tell us about what was Puzzled by Pink in? What was it about? Excuse me.
It is about sisters. One is kind of a Wednesday Addams little character, and then she has a sister who is very sparkly pink, tutus, the works. And it's their story. The pink sister tells her sister she can't come to her birthday party if she doesn't wear pink. And of course, the Wednesday Addams little girl doesn't want to do that. And they have to figure out how to come together.
And then you did Paint Me and Dress Me. And I bet you're working on more as we speak.
I am. I've got some illustration work for hire that I'm doing. And then I've got some other picture books that I've got in the works. I've got a novel in the works, and just sending things out.
Neat. That's so cool. Well, how do you know Steve? How did that relationship evolve?
Well, what's interesting is his album, the My Mississippi Reunion album, that is so good and features all these places in Mississippi. That album won the award, the music award for Mississippi Institute of Arts and Letters. And I'm on that board, and I guess it won in maybe 2019, and I'm on that board. And so I was actually the person who got to call Steve and tell him that he won. So we had not met, but spoken on the phone, and he couldn't, of course he had a gig and couldn't come to the award ceremony because he's the busiest person I know. But about when the song was adopted in 2022, I guess, or 2020, it was adopted about a year ago, so 2022. A mutual friend of ours, Teresa Hubbard, just put us together, and she just said, he's looking for an illustrator, and she referred him to my website. We spoke on the phone, realized we had, of course, spoken on the phone before, and I started playing around with how to illustrate the book, and it just moved on from there. We looped Neil in early on because Neil is so good at books and putting books together. This is Neil White at Nautilus Publishing, and he knows so much about Mississippi specific books that I knew we needed him. We needed him on the team, and it's been great. It's just been great. We're about to have our second printing already, and it's only been out 2 months.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so cool. Listen, as I was hearing you talk about this, the Mississippi Reunion, there's a great documentary out there. There's Something in the Water. Have you had the opportunity to watch it? Yeah. I mean, I talk about it on the show a lot because it really gives you a chance to see Steve's heart and soul, and with the King's man backing him up, and doing it in the juke joint there in Indianola. And gosh, just really get a chance to see it. And then later, one of the songs in there is Cold Water, and he did that in a collaboration with Cedric Burnside.
Yeah.
And, learning Cedric's family. His grandfather was a great drummer, and his dad. And then when Cedric goes to Europe, he's famous.
Yeah.
And comes back to Mississippi, and we take our blues artists for granted in Mississippi, but that's a whole nother story. But Steve's so talented, you get a chance to see how he interacts with such a wide variety of people. And in an interesting way, Steve was kind of the best person to write that song, because he'd proven through his whole life the way he learned how to play guitar from a blues guitarist behind his dad's liquor store. I mean, right. You can't make that stuff up.
Right. And that is so Mississippi. That's right there. That's such a Mississippi story.
So when he met you, not long after you guys met, we had a show together. We had a just series of shows together over the past 3.5 years. And he said, man, you're not going to believe this. He told Kyle and me, he said, man, I've got the best illustrator to do this show, to do the book, and we're going to do this book. And he was so excited about you and told us about who you were and blah, blah, blah. Well, then fast forward several months, and now he's starting to look at some of your work. You're starting to come out. He's starting to be, y'all were meeting, and you were showing him your illustrations, and he was telling Kyle and me about how unbelievably excited he was. I mean, he just couldn't wait for the book to come out. And then, of course, the book comes out and is so well received. And when you look at the words of the song, he jokes that it's like "Bye Bye," what is it? "Bye Bye American Pie." What's that? What the show? That song lasts forever.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, but when he talks about he talks about it in that way. It's a 5-minute song, but it takes a 5-minute song to be able to capture the essence of the geography and the sense of place that Mississippi is, and to think that he wrote that song like on the drive from Jackson back to Greenville. That's hard. I mean, it's hard to get your head around, isn't it?
Well, it is. And he keeps joking because I was, head down, not moving from my desk for 6 solid months. He was like, I hate to tell you how quickly I wrote the song. But I mean, it took him, I don't know how old Steve is, but I say it took him 50 years and one ride home in the car, because it's really, you don't just write a song like that out of nowhere. You've got a lifetime experience and learning, and you learned all that about songwriting.
And you travel across.
Yeah.
You travel across when he talks about hurricanes on the coast, you know them by name. It's just saying that it's right. You're talking like a coastal Mississippian, and every aspect, every piece of geography he brought in, he said it in such a way as someone who knows it, and he captured. So when you saw the words for the first time, were you like, oh my goodness, this is going to be such an incredible opportunity?
Of course. And his words are evocative, which is exactly what you want, because, like you said, the hurricanes, we know them by name. So what do you draw? And so there was so much freedom within the illustrations to expand on the story he was telling, and to even give it a different visual. I feel like the illustrations and the words complement each other and even say different things. And so, I mean, immediately when I started looking at the lyrics and looking hard at the lyrics, I just thought about all the different images that the lyrics evoked and the different situations. And the other thing I did when I got the lyrics was I thought, well, I could do this one of two ways. I could either illustrate exactly what he's saying and show a picture of, the Mississippi coast, or show a picture of the Natchez Trace. But one thing I know about children's books is kids really want to see themselves in the story. And so I created the cast of characters, and that was one of the first things I did, was send Steve that group of kids. And I said, listen, you may have in your mind that it's going to be, just these images of places or whatever. I said, but I'm going to take these kids through the state and let them tell the story. And he always, and I can't imitate him, but I love it. That was great. That's what you want. I had so much fun just figuring it out. And the other thing I wanted to do was not have any adults in the book. And so I used the kids to tell the whole story.
We'll pick it up from right there. But, Steve's Lebanese, and he's Catholic, and he grew up in the Delta. So he knew a lot about, he lived diversity. Yeah. And so that was important to him to show that. We'll talk about what the kids are when we come back on the other side, as we finish our conversation in the next segment with Sarah Frances Hardy. We'll see you after this. Welcome back to the Ricky Mathew Show. I have my new friend, Sarah Frances Hardy, and we're talking about the children's book, wonderfully illustrated book. She illustrated it. Steve Azar, the music and cultural ambassador for the state of Mississippi, wrote it, and it illustrates the new state song from Mississippi. When we went to break, though, she said there were no adults in it. which makes sense. And there are these casted characters that she really worked hard so that kids, when they read the book, they can see themselves in the book. And so tell us about each character.
Well, I created this diverse group of kids, and just, and they all have a different look. Their clothes kind of tell a story. And one of the things that was really challenging was showing the Mississippi musicians, because I wanted to show BB King and Elvis and Leontine Price, but here I had these children, so I ended up dressing the children up like these different musicians. The hardest page was the Natchez Trace one, because Steve's words talk about driving down the Natchez Trace. Well, these kids can't drive, so I had to figure out how to do that. And I ended up showing two cars. I did a Toyota and a Nissan, and I did models that are made in Mississippi. There's a lot of little Easter like that in the book. And then I had the kids as if they were taking selfies on their phones, on kind of superimposed over the image of the trace. So that's how I handled that. But I had a great time, very intentionally trying to represent lots of different races and kids, and even in the way they dress and the way they're navigating the state. So that was a goal. And to get to show the flag. The new flag is in the book. Which when I did research, and I did a lot of research for this book, I couldn't find a children's book that had our new flag in it. That's not to say there's not one out there, but I scoured our library system and our bookstores. I couldn't find a Mississippi children's book with our new flag. So just to be able to show that, I'm proud of it. I'm really proud of it.
Yeah, I am too. When I became publisher of the Sun Herald in 2001, it wasn't long after I became publisher that we did an editorial just calling for a change in the state flag. Yeah. It took a long time. A lot of people fought the effort, but eventually we came to our senses. Mm-hmm. Excuse me. And we came to a place where we now have a flag that can represent everyone, and that's so important to me. What I like about your book too is it illustrates the reality I talk about all the time, and that is that we live in a place where too often as I've said at the beginning of the show, we're in a polarized place where some people want us to remain polarized, but most people are in the middle. I don't care if you're center right or center left. Everybody, we agree on most of the issues. And most of us just kind of want to get along. And so when we're together, there's something wonderful about the resiliency of Mississippians, and you just have a sense of we're together. That's the point I want to make. That's what Steve's song says. That's what your illustrations say.
Yeah, and again, that was a goal. It was, and a goal of Steve's song is just let's highlight what's positive. Back to the hurricane page, I chose to show the children coming together and cleaning up after a hurricane, because that's what we do. So it is a really good walk through the state in a positive way. I do get a little bit of civil rights information in there. I show a child at the Civil Rights Museum and at the Greyhound bus stop in Jackson, where the Freedom Riders came. And I think that's a good place to acknowledge, this is part of our history, and look where we are now. And so I just feel like it's going to be I hope it'll be a great learning tool for years to come, and just a good positive ambassador. Honestly,
I think it's important. I think it's extremely important to have that part, because it is the reality. And I was talking with Nina Parikh from the film office. in the last few days. And we were talking about this burden, I call it a burden, that Mississippians who travel outside the state carry with us. You know, it's a sense of, I don't know what your perception is of this place, but let me show you through my actions and through my words that what you think about us may not necessarily be what is there today. Everyone has work to do. Every state has work to do, but we've come a long way. And we shouldn't shy away from our civil rights history, our history in general. We should embrace it and say that because those important events happened in Mississippi, we came to grips in a lot of ways with who we needed to be, who we wanted to be going forward. Anyway, it's been a pleasure. I'm sorry we're out of time, but it's been a pleasure to spend time with you.
Thank you. I enjoyed this so much. Thanks for all you're doing.
Well, thank you. We'll have you back again soon when you get your next book done. Come
there
back up.
Right.
Let's chat about it. This has been Sarah Frances Hardy. She's the illustrator of the new children's book, One Mississippi, written by my friend Steve Azar. Have a great day, and we will see you tomorrow.